بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين والجنة للموحدين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا ومولانا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. I pray all brothers and sisters are doing well, enveloped in the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Again, I apologize for not being able to make class yesterday. There was a family matter that I needed to take care of. I also thank you for taking the time out to make class today, even though technically it's not a scheduled time for class. Through the will and the bounty and fadl of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we continue with our 25th lesson on the Umdah al Salik or Umdah al Nasik of Imam Ahmad ibn Naqib al-Misri rahimahullah ta'ala. And we have reached the chapter that speaks of Kayfiyatul Ghusl or Kayfiyatul Ghusl if you prefer. And I'm just opening up my book. Maybe if one of the brothers would like to read, they can volunteer to do so, inshallah ta'ala. I just need to open up my text. It'll take a few seconds. Has anyone volunteered? No one. Bismillah, Umar Adams.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قال المصنف رحمه الله: فصل في كيفية الغسل. يبدأ المغتسل بالتسمية، ثم بإزالة قدر، ثم بوضوء كوضوء الصلاة، ثم يفيض الماء على رأسه ثلاثا، ناويا رفع الجنابة أو الحيض أو استباحة الصلاة، ويخلل شعره، ثم على شقه الأيمن ثلاثا، ثم الأيسر ثلاثا، ويتعهد معاطفه ويدلك جسده. وفي الحيض تتبع أثر الدم فرصة مسك، فإن لم تجد فطيبا غيره، فإن لم تجد فطينا، فإن لم تجد شيئا كفى الماء. والواجب منه شيئان: النية عند غسل مفروض، وتعميم شعره وبشره بالماء حتى ما تحت كلفة غير المفتون، وما يظهر من فرج الثيب إذا قعدت لحاجتها، ولو أحدث في أثنائه تممه، ولو تلبد شعره وجب نقضه إن لم يصل الماء باطنه. ومن عليه نجاسة يغسلها ثم يغتسل، ويكفي لهما غسلة في الأصح. ولو كان عليها غسل جنابة وغسل حيض فاغتسلت لأحدهما كفى عنهما. ومن اغتسل مرة واحدة بنية جنابة وجمعة حصل، أو بنية أحدهما حصل دون الآخر.
تمام. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Our author rahimahullah ta'ala commenced with a discussion regarding the manner of performing ghusl. And he said rahimahullah ta'ala, يبدأ المغتسل بالتسمية ثم بإزالة قذر ثم هدوء كهدوء الصلاة. يعني ثم بالتسمية هدوء أو بهدوء كهدوء الصلاة. He said that the person that is performing ghusl should commence with the tasmiyah. Our author rahimahullah ta'ala, when he discusses the kayfiyyat al-ghusl, he begins discussing those things which are recommended. So he does not follow a breakup of starting with the arkan or fara'id and thereafter the sunan, but he commences with the sunan, the manner in which a person should ideally perform in ghusl. So he said he begins with the tasmiyah. And the tasmiyah is to recite Bismillah, and it is preferable for him to recite the complete tasmiyah, which will be Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim wa akmaluha kamaluha. And when a person recites the tasmiyah, of course, he is performing a ghusl. And ghusl could either be compulsory or it could be sunnah. If it is a compulsory ghusl, then he is either in a state of hadath akbar, which is either janaba, and with relation to human folk, it could be a ghusl of hayd or nifas. So a person in the state of hadath akbar should not be reciting Quran. So when the person recites Bismillah at the beginning of a ghusl, they should not intend Quran but merely dhikr. For if they were to intend Quran or dhikr and Quran, they will be considered sinful. Now, if a person forgot to recite the basmala at the beginning of a ghusl, then similar as in the case of wudu, they may recite the basmala during the ghusl, but not after the ghusl has been completed. Now, not after the ghusl has been completed, because unlike we mentioned this, unlike in the matter of eating, where it is sunnah to recite the basmala if one forgot even after one completed one's meal, in the case of eating, you are presenting other harm to shaitan, in that he is forced to throw up that which he partook of your food if you recite the basmala at the end of your meal. However, that benefit is not applicable when it comes to wudu or ghusl, and therefore the basmala is to be recited at the beginning. And if you forgot during the wudu or ghusl, but not at the end. Once you complete, then it's no longer sunnah for you to recite the basmala. Now, then the next thing a person should do is he should remove filth. ثم بإزالة قذر. Filth could either be pure or filth could be impure. Pure filth would be such as mucus or sperm, ejaculate, or sperm could be filth, najis, or najas rather, such as pre-ejaculate or madhi, or traces of istinja. So the removal of filth that is pure is recommended, while the removal of filth that is najis, according to some, is considered compulsory, and according to others is considered recommended. And this discussion ties into whether one ghusl suffices, one ghusla suffices or not. So, if a person has an impurity on his body and he performs a ghusl and he washes his body only once, then that one washing will suffice for the removal of the abstract impurity, which is hadath, as well as the actual filth, which is not najas. Suffices with agreement. What if it's najas? Will one washing suffice if a person has najasa on his body? Yes or no? Who knows the answer to that question? I'm looking at your comments. So, Al-Imam al-Nawawi and Abu al-Qasim al-Rafi has an ikhtilaf on this masala. Abu al-Qasim al-Rafi says, if a person has najasa on his body, then the one ghasla will not suffice. Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala gave tarjih to the fact that one ghasla will suffice. It will suffice in the removal of najasa. It will also suffice in the removal of hadath, on condition that the qualities of the najasa is all removed within that one washing. if the qualities of the najasa is not removed, irrespective. Now, irrespective whether it's hukmiya or ayniya. Now, if the qualities are removed, it will suffice, otherwise not. And that detail you can find in Pejuri. Now, now so the tarkeez is not on hukmiya and ayniya. Hukmiya would be a najasa that exists but it has no body or no taste, no color or smell. Ayniya is najasa that has taste, color or smell. But if in the one washing all the description is removed, then one washing will suffice for both hadath and the removal of najasa. If however any najasa remains behind, then that one washing will not suffice for both the removal of najasa and hadath. So that was his discussion over here. This section of the book is not on my PDF, therefore I'm holding the book in my hand. So he thereafter has to remove filth, whether it is pure or impure, tahir or najas, and we had a discussion regarding whether one washing would suffice or not. After the removal of filth, it is then sunnah for him to perform a wudu like the wudu of salah. Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha transmitted in the Sahihain that the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when performing ghusl, would perform the wudu, his wudu that he would perform for salah. And Abu Thawr, who remembers Abu Thawr? Who remembers Abu Thawr? What does min ashabina mean? A student of Imam Shafi. Ahsan. Abu Thawr held the view that the wudu before ghusl is a shartun lil ghusli. However, Ibn al-Mundhir, who remembers Ibn al-Mundhir? Muhammad ibn al-Mundhir. He was one of the I think Umar Adams is saying al-Muhammadun al-Arba'a. And then Muhammadun al-Ghurba came up. So it's one of the al-Muhammadun al-Arba'a, one of the four Muhammads who benefited from Rabi' ibn Sulaiman al-Muradi as well as Imam al-Muzani rahimahullah ta'ala. He authored two books that discusses the madhaib of the ulama. The first book was titled Al-Awsat or At-Tawassut. What was the name of his book? We have a copy at the madrasa we studied at in Strain. We had a copy of it. And then he has another book on the same, also discussing the madhaib of the ulama, and that book is called Al-Iqna. I have a copy of that in my library as well. Al-Imam al-Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, one of his primary sources when he quoted the madhaib of the ulama in his majmu' were these two works of Ibn al-Mundhir. So Muhammad ibn al-Mundhir, he quoted a consensus that what Abu Thawr mentioned, that wudu is a shart before ghusl, he quoted a consensus from the ulama that it is not a shart. It is a sunnah, not a shart. Thereafter, the sunnah of wudu is fulfilled irrespective whether I perform the wudu before ghusl No, I don't think that's the complete title, the Muhammad Umar. The one is Al-Awsat, the one is Iqna, and then the additional title. No. It's not Iqna or Al-Ishraf. I have it inside. I'll have a look now, inshallah. Nonetheless, the wudu does not have to be performed at the beginning of the ghusl. It may be performed during the ghusl. It may be performed at the end of the ghusl. Part of the wudu can be performed at the beginning. Part of the wudu may be performed during the ghusl. And part of the wudu may be performed at the end of the ghusl. always, whether it's a beginning, middle, or end, or partially beginning, partially middle, partial end, a person will be fulfilling the sunnah of wudu. Now, thereafter, if a person is in a state of hadath akbar, but not in a state of hadath asghar, then he makes niyyah of wudu for a ghusl. He would make nawaitu sunnat al-wudu'i lil-ghusli. Now, if a person, however, is in a state of both hadath akbar and hadath asghar, then he will make a niyyah, when he performs that wudu, he will make the niyyah of a fard al-wudu or raf al-hadath, whatever intention to make before wudu. However, the question that you should be asking yourself is that a person being in a state of hadath akbar and asghar is easily understood. How does a person come to be in a state of hadath akbar but not in a state of hadath asghar? And this masala we covered not too long ago, only 3 or 4 lessons back. A person is in a state of hadath akbar and is not in a state of hadath asghar. Who wants to answer that question quickly? No. So a person is mumakkinun maq'adahu ala al-ard. There are 2 ways. I'm going to just suffice one example. Mumakkinun maq'adahu ala al-ard. His buttocks is firmly placed on the ground, and then he has an ihtilam. So he fell asleep, he had an ihtilam, his buttocks was firmly placed on the ground, so his wudu did not invalidate, but his ghusl did invalidate. And that would be an example of a person that enters into a state of hadath akbar dun al asghar. That also is if we are if it's musallam accepted that a person is able to ejaculate without releasing madhi or pre-ejaculate before ejaculating. Otherwise, if he released pre-ejaculate before ejaculating, then technically that person cannot be in a state of that person must be in a state of hadath asghar as well as hadath akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. I don't understand what you are saying, Yari, but the ihtilam is not a qaid.
No, I mean, because Bajuri, for example, because Ibn Qasim, for example, he gives the example of ihtilam in sitting, etc. But Bajuri said it might also happen by seeing a woman just ejaculating. You don't need to be asleep or something.
Yes, no. So those are all possibilities true. He sees someone and ejaculates without being seated. So it doesn't have to be asleep. Correct. Tamam. So in that instance, if he only has hadath akbar, which is rare, then all he needs to do is nawaitu sunnat al-wudu ila al-ghusli. However, if he's in both hadath akbar and hadath asghar, then you will say nawaitu fard al-wudu or nawaitu raf al-hadathi kama dhakarnahu. Tamam. يقول ثم يفيض الماء على رأسه ثلاثا. Thereafter he will pour water over his head thrice, intending the removal of janaba or haid or istibahat as-salah. So after his wudu, he then begins pouring water over his head. للاتباع, that was the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, in the washing of the head, it is not recommended to give preference to the right side over the head over the left side of the head. No. So he pours over the entire head, washing the entire head 3 times, as how Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam did, intending thereby the removal of janaba, raf al janaba. No. What is meant by raf al janaba? Rafa al-Janaba would be the removal of the actual abstract impurity that has settled on his entire body when he entered into a state of Janaba. That's what is meant by Rafa al-Janaba. That abstract impurity that prevents the validity of Salah. يمنع من نحو صحة الصلاة. Now, or a lady that is in hayd, she can make the intention of removing the hadath of hayd. Or she can make the intention of removing the hadath of nifas. No. However, the removal of the hadath of nifas is valid with an intention of the removal of the hadath of hayd. No? And vice versa. Tamam. Or they both can intend, male and female can intend to make salah permissible. Or they can intend fard al-ghusli. Or they can intend ada al-ghusli. No. Or they can intend nawaitu al-ghusla an-nahwi al-haydi. أو نويت الغسل للصلاة أو الطهارة للصلاة. No. However, they cannot make an intention نويت الغسل فقط أو نويت الطهارة فقط. There has to be الغسل للصلاة or there has to be الطهارة للصلاة. No. لا إله إلا الله. So the most simplest intentions to make for everybody, and we mentioned this in wudu, is to say nawaitu fard al-ghusl, I intend to perform the compulsory ghusl, and that would suffice. The intention must be made when a person begins washing any part of the body. In relation to the person performing ghusl, his entire body is ka'udwin wahid, like one body part. So whether he starts washing his toes or whether he starts washing his hair, when he begins washing any part of his body, he should make the niyyah of fard al-ghusl. If he washes part of his body without the intention, that will not count. Only those parts of the body that was washed after he made intention will count, obviously. Now, thereafter, he pours water on his right side of his body. The detail, the way the scholars mention this, he'll pour water on the front side of the right side of his body 3 times. And then he'll pour water on the back, on the right side at the back 3 times. However, Bayjur and others said it suffices for him to pour once water over his right, back and front 1 time. Because in the ghusl, the entire body is one body part, and therefore there's no need necessarily to draw distinctions between the front end and the back. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. So he begins washing the right side and then the left side. وَيَتَأَهَّدْ مَعَاطِفَهُ. Your ma'atif is going to be those places of the body that water doesn't easily reach, such as the armpits. So ensure that you're rubbing under the armpits. وَطَبَقَاتِ بَطْنٍ. If a person has a belly or a stomach that has layers, to ensure that he's washing between the layers. No? So if you have layers, they don't call that the 6-pack, they call it the 6 rolls. So if you have any of those rolls, then in between the layers, يَتَعَهَدْ مَعَاطِفَهُ is to do so. Thereafter, to يَتَعَهَدْ مَعَاطِفَهُ also includes the washing of the ears. No. How do you ensure that you wash the ears? They say that's recommended that you fill your palm with water and place your ear in the water in your palm to ensure that the inside of the ear is all washed. However, it's not compulsory. Today, if you're taking a shower, more effective than placing water in your hand and placing your ear into your hand like this, more effective is to allow water to run directly into the ear by tilting your head. Now, however, this is not compulsory, because the ruling when it comes to ghusl is that I should have ghalabatul dhann that water has reached a particular area. I do not require yaqeen. So when I poured water over my back and I had ghalabatul dhann that water reached my entire back, I do not need yaqeen to go and rub the actual my back. No. Similarly, the area of my private area, if I poured and flowed water there properly and adequately, and I have ghalabatul dhan, that water has reached all the areas between my private areas and between my private area, then that would suffice. And it's not compulsory to lift up one's legs or to use a rag or the like to ensure that water has reached everywhere, even though that may be recommended, especially for somebody that is a bit more plump. Now, because a person that has more meat or fat, generally water reaches grooves and the private area with some more difficulty. And therefore, one needs to exert oneself to a point where you have ghalabatul dhan, that water has reached everywhere, and you don't need to aim for achieving yaqeen. Yaqeen is not a requirement. Alhamdulillah. CD Dylan is asking, is taking ghusl with a bucket, especially a saw of water, considered a sunnah or superior to taking ghusl? But undoubtedly, the sunnah of Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam was that he used one saw. A saw is the equivalent of approximately 3 liters of water. So from the sunnah of wudu is to perform wudu out of a bucket and to be scooping water. No. And if you can use one saw, then that is preferable. However, using less than a saw will be considered. What's the ruling of using less than a saw? Khalid says makruh. Does anyone agree with him? We discussed this under the masala of wudu. We say that to use less than 1 mud is what? Is it makruh or not makruh? What do you remember, Khalid? Abdul Ghafoor says makruh, and Muhammad Umar says khilaf al-awla. No. I think it's between makruh and khilaf al-awla. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala a'lam. No. Somebody can revise the masala for us. It will be good, inshallah. Afatul ilmi. Afatul ilmi النسيان. ويتعهد معاطفه. نعم يقول ويدلك جسده. He should rub his body. يدلك جسده. Dalk is considered recommended and not compulsory. It's recommended to wipe your body not once, but after each pouring. So after I poured water over my right the first time, it's recommended that I rub the front and the back, whatever my hands is able to reach of my body. When I pour for the second time again, for the third time again. Now, however, it's not compulsory, because a person is still considered to be a muhtasil, irrespective whether he is rubbing his body or not. Now, however, Al-Imam Malik, rahimahullah, as well as Imam Al-Muzani, rahimahullah, they said that wiping those parts of the body that the hands are able to reach is compulsory. No. However, our response to that is Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he said to Sayyidina Abu Dharr radiyallahu ta'ala an, فَإِذَا وَجَدْتَ الْمَاءَ, if you find water, then allow water to make mass to touch your skin. He didn't say rub it into your skin. So if water is touching the skin, it suffices. وَلَمْ يَأْمُرُهُ بِزِيَادَةٍ, he did not command him to do anything more than that. Now, also what is sunnah in relation to a lady that is bleeding, that has hayd or nifas or the like, وَفِي الْحَيْدِ, it is mandub تتبع, يعني أن تتبع يعني المرأة أثر الدم فرصة مسك, that the area that was affected with blood thus has a stench, that she follows it up with some musk. She does that by applying some perfume or musk or the like to a piece of cotton, and she applies it to those areas. Now, That is something which is recommended for a lady, even if she is a virgin, or even if she is unmarried. However, it's not recommended for a lady that is in her iddah, specifically the iddatul wafat, her husband passed on. Because generally a lady that is in a iddah, it's not recommended that she adorns herself unnecessarily. What do they call it? Ihdad. No. And it's not recommended for the muhrima lady in a state of ihram. Because the haram is a temporary situation that she finds herself in, and she can always apply perfume to the traces, the areas that may have a stench on account of a blood once she exits from ihram. So it's sunnah that she follows the traces of blood with some musk. And if she doesn't have musk, then some other perfume or the like. No. And if she doesn't have any perfume or the like, then water will suffice. And with that, the author concluded his discussion on the manner in which wudu should be performed. However, there would be some additional discussion. There are some other sunnah. What other sunnah are there? Facing the Qibla. At-tawajjuh lil-Qibla is also from the sunnah of ghusl, like it is from the sunnah of wudu. To perform ghusl at such a place where whatever you are washing off your body does not sprinkle back onto your body. To ensure that you are covered appropriately even when you are alone or in the company of those whom it's permissible for them to see your body. Man yajuzu nadaruhu ila awratihi. Now, however, if a person is by himself, or in the company of such a person who is permitted to look at his awrah, such as his wife or husband, then it's permissible for them to shower completely naked when they're by themselves, or in the company of someone like a spouse. However, it's preferred that they maintain satr. Covering themselves is going to be preferable. No. Now, also, what our scholars discuss under this chapter, as Imam Ghazali mentions in his Ihya, that while in a state of janaba, it is preferred that a person does not shave any hair of his body, or a person does not trim his nails, or he does not remove any part of his body prior to performing the ghusl. Why? Because Imam Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala and some of the ulama mentioned that all a person's body parts will return to him on the day of judgment. And if you sever those body parts while in a state of janaba, those body parts remain in a state of janaba and returns to you on the day of judgment in a state of janaba. And therefore, our salaf and our mashayikh were very particular where they buried the hair and nails and other such things that came from their bodies. And some of them were particular when it came to the hair of burying it in sacred spaces, such as Jannatul Ma'la in Makkah al-Mukarramah and Baqi al-Gharqad in Medina al-Munawwara, or generally in any place that is not filthy. And a person that is accustomed to flushing down hair and nails and the like down the toilet, by way of example, their body parts will come to them from a very filthy place. And while this is contested by some of the scholars, in other words, not all of the scholars accepted that all of your body parts will return to you on the day of judgment, it was a view held by many of the ulama. And a sane person, and I speak to myself firstly, should practice caution in this regard. Why be reckless when there is a possibility that on the day of judgment, when my body parts are returned to me, how it will happen, Allah knows best, that I allow my body parts to return to me in a state of janaba, or in a filthy state, or from a filthy place. No. And it all speaks about wara'. Said Habib Umar, some of our brothers were with him when he said, Habib Umar, as soon as he comes out of Ihram, one of the first things he does is he takes his Ihram and places it over his head so that his head is covered. Right? I haven't seen anyone do that before to ensure that they are fulfilling the sunnah of having the head covered. And when he has his head shaved at one of the barbers in Makkah, he ensures that someone is there to catch his hair so that his hair may be buried in a good place rather than being dumped in some rubbish dump. And this all speaks of their peculiarness and particularness. Their, what's the word I'm looking for? How particular they are in ensuring that they are on the day of rising, that they are in the best state, in the company of the best of men, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And if my body is filthy or in a state of janaba, ila akhiri, how can I be in the company of he who is pure, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Now, also, the sunnah is to wash each section of the body 3 times. Muhammad Umar is producing the text that speaks about the amount of water that one should use. Al-Isnawi, from what book is this? Muhammad Umar. وقد أفهم قول شيخي والمستحب ألا ينقص الماء في الغسل أو غسل عن صاع الهداية إلى أهم الكفاية. الإمام الإسنوي is known for a genre of literature where he criticized a number of authors before him. Like he has a book title, I think it's التوسط والفتح بين الروضة والشرح. I think that was his, I'm not sure. And then he has a few books where he criticizes Imam Nawawi rahimahullah ta'ala, and many times his criticism was not accurate. So quoting directly from one of the works where Isnawi, Al-Imam Jamaluddin al-Isnawi is criticizing, like here, he's taking issue with Ibn Rif'ah and pointing out the errors of Ibn Rif'ah. Another book of his in this regard is Al-Muhimmat. So Imam al-Isnawi, not his criticism on previous authors are not always accurate. But nonetheless, what does he say? وقد أفهم قول الشيخ والمستحب ألا ينقص الماء في الغسل أو بالغسل عن صاع ولا في الهدوء المد أن الزيادة على ذلك فيهما ليست مكروهة، وكلام الأصحاب يدل على أن المستحب الاقتصار على الصاع والمد لأن الرفق محبوب، وعليه يدل ما روي أنه عليه الصلاة والسلام قال: سيأتي أقوام يستقلون هذا فمن رغب في سنتي وتمسك بها بعث معي في حظيرة القدس. انتهى كلامه. So this doesn't speak about using less. والمستحب ألا ينقص. It's recommended that water should not be less than saw. No. So at least if he's quoting Ibn Rif'ah is mentioning that it's mustahab that water should not be less than a saw, or it should not be less than a mud. And the opposite of mustahab is between makruh and khilaf al-awla. So Umar Adam said they do not say it's makruh. So what do they say? I'm assuming they're saying it's khilaf al-awla. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. Or for the very least, it's not mustahab. No. The jurists are very, the expressions when it comes to khilaf al-mustahab is always is always when anything is khilaf al-mustahab, then the expression differs. They sometimes say makruh at the most stringent. Sometimes they say khilaf al-awla, which is one less stringent than makruh. And we've recently seen them even using khilaf al-afdal, which is even less stringent than khilaf al-awla. What does Munawi say? يسن أن يكون ماء الغسل أو الغسل صاعا وهو 5 أرطال وثلث بالبغداد وماء الوضوء مدا فإن نقص وأسبغ أجزأ وإن زاد كان إسرافا وهذا في من بدنه كبدن المصطفى صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم نعومة ونحوها وإلا زيد ونقص لائق بالحال. Now, Munawi was a Shafi'i. However, generally we do not quote his words as a reference for ahkam fiqhiyya. The Fayd al-Qadir of Imam al-Munawi was one of, let's say, kitab la yastaghni anhu talib ilm. Person studying hadith la yastaghni an Fayd al-Qadir al-Imam al-Munawi. However, generally the Fayd al-Qadir is not quoted as a reference when it comes to Shafi'i fiqh. I remember the masala being, if not makruh, then khilaf al-awla. Continue searching and you'll find it, inshallah. Barakallahu fikum. Barakallahu fikum. يقول المصنف رحمه الله تعالى والواجب منه شيئان. So after we covered that which is recommended or mustahab, he now mentions that which is wajib, and he says, "Wal wajib minhu shay'an." Of what we mentioned in terms of the kayfiyya of wudu, that which is wajib is only two things. Number one is the niyyah, the intention. عند أول غسل مفروض أو غسل مفروض وتعميم شعره وبشره بالماء حتى ما تحت قلفته. And that can also be read قلفته غير المختون وما يظهر من فرج الثيب إذا قاعدت لحاجتها. So those are the two things that are wajib. Number one is النية. إنما الأعمال بالنيات. So similar to wudu, the niyyah over here is wajib. And we discussed the niyyah. The most versatile niyyah that you can make in relation for any compulsory ghusl is nawaitu fard al-ghusl. Now, and we mentioned it does not matter whether you start from the bottom of the body with the toes or the head, any part of the body suffices for you to make your niyyah. Now, the second is that you need to encompass the entire body, hair and skin with water, even if the hair happens to be dense. In wudu, we said that thick, dense hair does not need to be washed باطنا وإنما يجب غسله ظاهرا. أما في الغسل فيجب غسل الشعر ظاهرا وباطنا ولو كان كثيفا. Why? Why would you think there's a difference? The difference is because wudu is something you do on a daily basis, up to 5 times and sometimes more than 5 times daily, whereas ghusl is something that you do once in a while. And perhaps in your young early days when you just got married, you may be doing it daily, but it's once a day compared to several times a day. And therefore the hair, even if thick and dense, has to be washed ظاهرا وباطنا. And Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, من ترك موضع شعرة من جنابة لم يغسله, ever leaves the space of one strand of hair from janaba, he failed to wash it in his ghusl, لم يغسله فعل الله به كذا وكذا من النار. Allah will do with him so and so in relation to punishment in the fire. And therefore Sayyidina Ali radiallahu ta'ala and many of the companions, they used to shave their heads. I don't know about Sayyidina Ali, but many of the companions radiallahu ta'ala anhum, they used to shave their heads to ensure that water reaches the skin under their hair. No. And therefore, a person that has plaited hair, women folk generally that has plaited hair, even though plaiting one's hair is sunnah for males as well. Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam used to plait his hair, and I think we had this discussion before. So the dafair, it's compulsory upon a lady to break down her plaited hair or tied up hair so that if water is not going to reach the hair entirely. No. However, a person that has hair that becomes tied up or bundled up naturally. So the one thing is plaiting one's hair. So you're taking hair and you're tying one on top of the other, and thus it becomes tightly knitted together. That person is compulsory upon him or her to unplait the hair in order for water to reach the dhahir and the batin of the hair, including the scalp beneath it, the skin. A person that has naturally hair that is curled up, irrespective of whether that person could have avoided it by taking care of his or her hair, or it is unavoidable, the hair just curled up naturally, that person, water needs to reach the outside of his or her hair, it needs to reach the scalp, but that person will not be obligated to go for a special procedure whereby he or she is able to unplait the hair, and whatever part inside the batin of the hair that water does not reach will be ma'fuun an. So Muhammad Nawawi al-Jawi, he mentioned this in his book Qutul Habib al-Gharib. What did he say? بخلاف من أقد بنفسه وإن كثر وإن قصر صاحبه بأن لم يتعهده بدهن ونحوه لعدم تكليفه تعهده أما من أقد بفعله فلا يعفى عنه أصلا. So a person whose hair becomes tied up and woven together like plaited hair naturally, and then it's difficult to take the hair apart, whatever does not reach the batin of that will be ma'fuun an, will be overlooked. So he said, rahimahullah ta'ala, وتعميم شعره وبشره بالماء حتى ما تحت قلفة غير المختون. Even the part of the male organ that is covered by the foreskin of the person that has not performed circumcision, that must also be washed. There was a discussion I read somewhere, I can't remember where it was now, regarding the person that has not performed circumcision. If a person is not able to wash the skin of the female organ under the foreskin that's supposed to be removed in circumcision, it's compulsory for him to remove that skin. And if he's not able to remove that skin, like in time, then that person should perform the salah of someone that has no access to water or soil. Now, that's in relation to a person that is alive. As for a person that has passed on and has not yet been circumcised, then such that it's not possible to perform the ghusl for that person, And I cannot perform his ghusl correctly because the foreskin of his dhakar, male organ, is covering part of his dhakar that's supposed to be washed in a ghusl. That foreskin should not be removed in relation to that deceased person, and he should be buried without performing salah upon him, according to the carried view, the mu'tamad position by Imam al-Ramli. Ibn Hajar, however, held a different view, and he said, for that part of the dhakar that cannot be washed because it's covered with foreskin that cannot be lifted. So the foreskin on the private, sometimes it stick to the private, and thus one cannot wash that which is under the foreskin. And at other times it can be lifted easily off the private. So when it sticks such that one cannot wash under, Ramli said that since the ghusl cannot be made, no salah should be performed on that person, and he should be buried without performing salah. Ibn Hajar said no, you can perform tayammum on behalf of that area under the foreskin that cannot be washed on account of darura, and then pray salah upon him. And generally it's preferred to follow the view of Ibn Hajar in this regard, making satr of the status of the deceased. No. Similarly, the lady, what does she have to wash? They have to wash in the ghusl the dhahir of her farj, of her private, and the dhahir of her farj is that part of the farj which is apparent when she is squatting. So he said, قَعَدَتْ لِحَاجَتِهَا. La ilaha illallah. If a person enters into a state of hadath while performing ghusl, so he releases flatulence or urine, then they should complete the ghusl without performing wudu again, because that hadath that a person may experience does not affect the status of the ghusl. How much is left now? Fatima is asking, how is it for a male Muslim that is not circumcised and the person dies? Would the ghusl for the mayyit be correct? I discussed that, right? It depends. If the dhakar, the male organ, can be washed, if you can pull the foreskin to the front and wash it, then the ghusl is valid. Salah should be made upon him and he should be buried by agreement. However, if it's stuck, if the foreskin is stuck to his dhakar, such that you cannot perform the ghusl, then Ramli and Ibn Hajar has a debate, and I discussed that. The uncircumcised woman does not have skin that is covering other skin. So the circumcision of a lady works different, and therefore it won't apply. This masala does not apply to her. Wallahu subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. Allah. Now, there's a discussion in relation to the wudu. If a person performs wudu, the sunnah is that he needs to maintain that wudu until the sunnah is to maintain his wudu until the end of his ghusl. And then our scholars also in that wudu, they say that nothing will invalidate that wudu other than jima'. Now it's actually a interesting masala that I left out because we are forced to leave out a number of discussions, and I need to finish this chapter now. So وَمَنْ عَلَيْهِ نَجَاسَةٌ يَغْسِلُهَا ثُمَّ يَغْتَسِلْ وَيَكْفِي لَهُمَا غَسْلًا. This discussion we had already. A person that has najasa on his body, he washes the najasa and then he performs ghusl. However, one washing will suffice for both the removal of the hadath akbar and the najasa. I started off the class with this discussion, and that is according to The view of Imam Nawawi, not the view of Abu al-Qasim al-Rafi'i. No. ولو كان عليها غسل جنابة وغسل حيض فاغتسلت لأحدهما كفى عنهما. If a lady is in a state of janaba and hayd, one ghusl suffices for both. And a person who performs ghusl with one intention for both janaba and jum'ah, that suffices. So you can have a tadaruj. However, if the person only intends janaba, it will only be a ghusl for janaba and it will not suffice as a ghusl for jum'ah. You need to make the intention of both, not tadaruj, at-tadakhul. The tadakhul masala is an interesting masala that comes down to whether the amal is maqsood or ghayr maqsood. And the rule is that two maqsood actions cannot, one ghusl cannot suffice, or one salah cannot suffice for two maqsood actions. However, one maqsood with as many ghayr maqsood as possible can be joined, but I'll have to have that discussion with you at another time, inshallah ta'ala. Now, Sidi Amir, you can ask a question. Sidi Ari, you can ask one at the end of class. Muhammad Umar, ماء وضوء عن مد وغسل عن صاع تقريبا فيهما للاتباع. رواه مسلم. فعلم أنه لا حد له حتى لو نقص عن ذلك. وأسبغ أجزأه. ويكره الإسراف فيه. والصاع 4 أمداد والمد رتل وثلث بغدادي. ويسن ألا ينقص ماء الوضوء عن مد والغسل عن صاع حديث مسلم عن سبعين وصاع. So those quotations from Qalyubi and Fujairami seems to be saying that if a person uses less than a saw and less than a mud, that is just permissible, not makruh, neither khilaf al-awla. So the Amir is asking, what is the ruling of using hand sanitizers with alcohol? The question stems from concerns about talfiq when leading salah. With all of these universally imposed restrictions related to COVID-19, it gets really complicated and we just want to preserve the salah as best as possible. With the restricted number of people in a masjid at any given time, one may need to lead salah multiple times over. This is especially in the case of Jummah, but there are so many issues where we are very likely to fall into some sort of contradiction. No. So the masala of alcohol in sanitizer, hand sanitizer, is that there are two ways of looking at it. I'm not feeling too well. Please excuse me in the stars, inshallah. So the hand sanitizers, there are two ways of looking at it. The first way is that I know Sheikh Nuh Kala and many other modern scholars, they drew a distinction between industrial alcohol, alcohol that is created within a lab, that are used in products and colognes and soaps and so forth and so on, and alcohol that is produced on account of, alcohol that is produced through the fermentation of fruits, specifically for drinking, such as wine and beer, khamr. So according to them, the alcohol in the hand sanitizer is tahir and not najis. And that in itself is a view that you may act upon. Another view that exists among the scholars, Imam Muzani in particular, was that khamr in the first place, even if it's that of wine or beer, is not impure, it's not najis, but tahir. Another angle you could look at it from is umum al balwa. So umum al balwa is that when a product is so widespread in the market that it becomes very difficult to avoid, that it will be overlooked. An example of this was rennet that was used in the cheese making industry in Cairo. And they used a rennet that was najas to produce cheese, even though cheese makers were not that many. And it was very easy to come to the core of this problem. But Imam Ramli then stated that because the cheese of those cheese makers are so widespread within our community, the fact that the rennet used in the cheese making process was najas will be overlooked. And that was for consumption, never mind washing one's hands. So there are a number of ways in which you could overcome the problem with alcohol in hand sanitizers. I've given you 3 options. As for the ta'addud al-Jumu'ah, there's an interesting fatwa that I could share with you explaining the permissibility of that. No. I don't think he mentions it in the Reliance, Wallahu Alam, but I have read an article somewhere where they ascribe this view to Sheikh Noor, Wallahu Alam. No, that is it. Industrially, alcohol produced in a lab is synthetic alcohol. No. Tamam. So I'm going to conclude here, inshallah ta'ala. I'm actually feeling a bit dizzy, so make dua for us, inshallah. And I'll have to conclude this. I think we've reached the end. I think I'm just feeling dizzy because of lack of sugar. I don't think I'm sick, inshallah. May Allah grant us cure. Did I finish? Yes, we covered this subject, this chapter, even though we just ran through the last few pages. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept. And may He grant us all understanding of deen. We meet everybody tomorrow, same time, inshallah. Tomorrow we'll be looking at Lubb al Usul that we've now skipped for a good number of weeks. So we look at the Lubb al Usul tomorrow, inshallah. And on Thursday we continue with our fiqh. May Allah keep all of you safe and healthy. May Allah protect us all from all types of ailments and sicknesses and all evil. Alhamdulillah, our brother Yari contracted the virus last week or the week before, but his symptoms were very mild and he's all good now, alhamdulillah. Our brother Shafi Ahmad Sali, that usually attends a class with us, him and his family contracted the virus, but their symptoms are also very mild, but they are currently in quarantine. So all who are ill, may Allah grant him shifa, and those who have not taken ill, may Allah keep them healthy. في هذه النوايا بما نوى سلفنا الصالح بما نوى سيد الحي عمر وإلى حضرة النبي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة. بسم الله. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله. Sidi Yari, you can ask your question. I forgot you wanted to ask.
Jazakallah khairan, Sheikh. Don't want it to give you too much stress, you know. The one is usually in our books, if they talk about the wajibat of the ghusl, they say والشقوق لا غور لها, like the difficult to translate, the cleft, right, and not the hole inside, something like that. So from there I would understand that ear holes don't need to be washed inside like the Hanafis do. But was the only author that I ever saw it, Muhammad al-Jordani, rahimahullah. He's having this book on fiqh, Fatih al-Alam is called, I think. There he says the ear holes need to be washed inside. Is this something well known? Because I don't find it in any other of the Shafi books. I always was taught and thinking that the ear hole inside does not need to be washed like the Hanafis.
The Fath al-Alam that I know is by Ibn Alan, isn't it? Who's
No, there are different ones. One, Muhammad Jordani is also having, maybe I quoted the name wrongly, but he's having a 5-volume work on fiqh. Muhammad Jordani.
He on the 40 Nawawiyah.
The same author, yeah, the same author. I don't know how strong he is in fiqh. Wallahu a'lam, yani.
So, Sidi, my laptop is on 1%. And I'm
Okay.
just worried now that it's going to my laptop is going to die. Inshallah, if you don't mind, raise the question in the next class and we can look into it, inshallah.
Inshallah, Sheikh. Jazakallah khairan.
No. Sheikh Saeed, can we look at your request in the next class as well, if you don't mind? Sheikh Saeed, I said it's okay if we respond to your question in the next class. Is he still with us? Khair. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.